is looking at every single seed to see its strength, its potential to grow massively for the veins on the side of the seed. And when they find these colossal seeds and they plant, they become colossal pumpkins. So that's the first step to growing a colossal pumpkin. Now, how does this apply to growing a colossal business? The ordinary entrepreneur is in the cheap seed game. And what it is simply to copy your competition. Do whatever your competition does, but just do it better. And that's what we've all been told to do. Just be better than the competition. And I'm here to tell you that's a failing game. Colossal entrepreneurs know that better is not better, but different is better. How do you become different from your competition? And there's 3 components to doing this. The first one, if you look at kind of the Olympic symbols where you have these big rings, in your mind, picture the Olympic symbols over each other where you have 3 circles intersecting. On the left side here, we have uniqueness. And if you want to build a colossal business, the first question is, what makes you truly unique as an individual, as a person? Because the best businesses exploit what the entrepreneur is inside. In other words, we amplify ourselves. When I meet entrepreneurs, and I've had the privilege of meeting entrepreneurs throughout the entire globe now, when I meet entrepreneurs, the most successful ones are ones who say, my business is my soulmate. That the business is an amplification of me. And actually, Steve Jobs is a great example of this. Steve Jobs, when he built Apple, exploited his own personal uniqueness. There was something about him that was different or unique from other people. And what it was Steve Jobs had a phobia of buttons. He was afraid of buttons. And because of his fear of buttons, that uniqueness, Steve Jobs was able to use that in Apple. And they made products just like this, the Apple iPhone. And it's buttonless. And I can only picture the meetings that Steve Jobs had with his engineering team when they were trying to compete with other products like BlackBerry. His engineering team probably thought better was better. Just make another phone with more buttons than BlackBerry. And Steve Jobs said no, because his uniqueness was his fear of buttons. And therefore, Steve Jobs made a product that is basically buttonless. And if you look at all of Apple's products, because Steve Jobs exploited his uniqueness, Apple was the first company to blend art with technology, to change the paradigm of how businesses run. If you look at the Apple mouse, it has no buttons. It's buttonless. Where the Microsoft product, it basically is a glove, has like a foot pump. That's what a mouse is supposed to be like. But because of Steve Jobs' uniqueness, his fear of buttons, he employed it in his business. They made a product that was buttonless. So the first question for you, if you want to build a colossal business, is what makes you unique? What makes you different? That's the first part of the giant seed. But there's a second part here on the right side, and they must intersect. This is top client demand. Do you have clients that want your uniqueness and buy from you repeatedly? Because if you don't have customers that come back to you and buy over and over, they're demonstrating by their actions your uniqueness is not unique enough. It's not what they want. So the second part of the seed is what truly distinguishes you and how does it intersect with what people want. And the way you can tell what people want is when they buy from you repeatedly. When a person comes back and buys from you again and again and again, they're telling you through their actions that they love your uniqueness. And many businesses, and I suspect there's entrepreneurs in the audience here, many businesses, I suspect, get this. I suspect you're distinct or unique in your business. I suspect you have customers buying from you repeatedly. But there's a third part that most people miss, and it's systemization. And just so we're on the same page, what systemization is this. If you can attract prospects, convert those prospects to customers, have them pay you money for what your service is, and have them love the experience and perhaps even refer you to other people, all while you're sleeping, that's systemization. If your business can deliver everything without any of your conscious input, that is the ultimate in systemization. And it's at the intersection of these 3 things where you have the colossal seed, a business that can grow explosively. So, Step one to growing a colossal pumpkin is uniqueness must meet customer demand, must meet systemization. You have to have that. The second step to growing a colossal pumpkin is called sprout analysis. And if you're a pumpkin farmer, if you're an ordinary pumpkin farmer, you look at your fields and you look for the smallest sprouts. And you look for them because you want to help them. You're in the quantity game. The ordinary farmer is served by growing as many pumpkins as possible. So you want to help the weak sprouts. You loosen the soil. You give them some extra water. The colossal farmer, on the other hand, only looks for the strongest sprouts. So he'll go over the field looking around, and when he identifies the strongest sprouts, he'll help them by loosening the soil and giving some extra water. And in fact, the weakest sprouts, he'll pull them out and throw them away. Because the colossal farmer knows this, that a strong sprout, a colossal sprout, what's growing strongly from the beginning, can become a massive pumpkin. So that's how it works in pumpkin farming, but how does that work for our businesses? The ordinary entrepreneur focuses on weaknesses. What's the weakness of my colleagues, employees? I need to take my best salesperson and have her teach my weakest salesperson how to sell. The mentality of the ordinary entrepreneur is fix the weak. What's my personal weaknesses? Where do I struggle? Am I bad at accounting? Then I will go back to school for accounting. And who's my weakest customers? I personally, as the owner of this business, will devote my time to my weakest customers. And that's the path of the ordinary entrepreneur. The colossal entrepreneur focuses on strengths. Who is my strongest salesperson? I'm going to help them sell like crazy. And what's my personal strengths? If I'm great at selling, I'm going to go out and sell more. If I'm bad at accounting, I'll find someone else that's strong at that. And who's my strongest customers? I will devote all my time and attention to serving my strongest customers. The colossal entrepreneur knows that to grow colossally, to grow big, you have to focus on the strongest parts of your business. And here's something you can do today, tonight, when you have time. I want you to look at your existing clients, the people you've worked with in the past, and sort them out by the revenue they've made for you, by the money they've spent for you, on you. And the reason is when you identify your strongest customers, the goal is to replicate them, to clone them, to have more of your best customers. So this is what you do. Take your clients over the last year and sort them by revenue. The most revenue, the most money at the top, down to the lowest at the bottom. And the reason this is important is because people show their need for you by the money they spend, not their words. I know so many entrepreneurs that will go to customers and say, well, how's my business? How's my service? How do you think I am? And the customer will say, good, you're pretty good, and then never do business with you again. People do not speak the truth through their words. They speak the truth through their wallets, through their actions. So we want to sort our clients by revenue. The most revenue at the top to the least revenue at the bottom. And the reason we do this is because the customers that like us the most are spending the most with us. Here's just another funny example. I spoke in Copenhagen in Denmark about 2 years ago, sharing the same concept with very large companies, mid-cap companies that do $500 million to $1 billion a year. And I was doing this presentation, and if you're a brand new business, a brand new startup, or if you're a billion-dollar corporation, the principle of this colossal seed that I'm telling you applies to everyone. Well, I was telling the story and drawing the seed on a board. I had this whiteboard up, and I was drawing all the elements. And as I was talking, I started to perspire. And I had this big marker in my hand. And as I was talking to the audience, I tried to rub the sweat off my face, and I drew a massive eyebrow, a unibrow on my face. And no one said anything. No one said anything. No one could look at me. All of a sudden, everyone had to take notes and look away. And that story points to the fact that we do not speak the truth to each other because often it's socially inappropriate. We don't want to offend people, so we don't speak the truth. It's our actions that speak the truth. So, if you ask your customers, how am I doing? they'll say, fantastic, everything's great, but it may not be. Customers that buy from you repeatedly are telling you that they love you, that you are great. So, in this assessment, the first thing you do is sort your clients by revenue, most revenue to least revenue. But there's a second column you need to make, and I call it the Cringe Factor. And basically, this is how it works. When you look at that first client on the list, the number one revenue client, do you smile when they call? Are you excited? Yes, more business? Or do you cringe? Are you like, oh, adios mio. I can't stand these people. And you don't want to do business with them. Well, it's important because if you like customers and you enjoy doing business with them, you'll do great. You'll do phenomenally. But if you don't enjoy working with customers, the work you do can't be good because your energy won't be there. Colossal businesses know this. You take your best clients, the most revenue, and you match them up to the clients that you like the most. And sometimes it's the first client on the list, sometimes it's not. For me, when I did this, I used to be in technology too. I installed hardware technology for about 10 years. And that company became a multi-million-dollar company before I sold it. But what we did was we were struggling at first. I first did this assessment with my clients, and I found that I had clients that spent a lot of money with me that I didn't like, some that spent a lot of money with me that I did like, and then a whole lot that spent very little money with me. Once I identified the top clients, the ones who spend the most with me, and they make me smile, the objective for me and for you should be to clone them, to copy them. This is how you do it. I found that my best client was a hedge fund. I circled the top client on the list, the most money, and I liked doing business with. I then went to meet with them and learned about the hedge fund industry. And you should do the same too. Once you identify your best clients, meet with them face to face. You want to understand their business better than they do because then you can copy them and find other businesses just like them. And so I went out to lunch with this one client and I learned everything about the hedge fund industry. I found, in fact, there's 3 key questions that you must ask your customers if you want to get more just like them. And here's the 3 questions. First questions when you meet with customers is to ask, what am I doing right? What do you like about me? What am I doing right? And when I asked this hedge fund, the owner's name was Larry, about what am I doing right, he said, Mike, one thing that impresses me is when our technology breaks, that you get a technical person at our facility within 2 or 3 hours. That impresses me. That's what you're doing right. Now, here's the key to that question. When you ask your customers, what are you doing right? What am I doing right? Your customers will not tell you what you're doing right. They'll tell you what they notice, what they're paying attention to. And so when my client said, I appreciate you getting on site, excuse me, within a couple hours, what he was saying is he notices how quickly I get on site. And from that day forward, I sent all my technicians, my people, to locations that were always within 10 kilometers of his office. And then when he had an emergency, I would take one of my technicians and send them right to my best customer. And now I was getting on site within 30 minutes, within 15 minutes. And he noticed that. So if you want to clone your best customers, if you want more customers like your best, ask them what you're doing right, and they'll tell you what you need to improve. The second question to ask is, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Now, the challenge with that question is people lie to each other. It's socially appropriate not to speak harshly about someone. So when you ask your customers, what am I doing wrong? There's a better way to ask it. Ask, what's wrong with my industry? What's wrong with the industry or field that I'm in? And if you ask your customer what's wrong with your industry, now it becomes the person outside the room, and your customer will be honest with you. I mean, I was the computer guy. I was setting up computer technology. When I asked Larry, the owner of the hedge fund, if I asked what's wrong with me, he wouldn't say what's wrong with me. I said, hey, what's wrong with the computer industry? You've worked with other computer companies. And he told me all the problems of the computer industry. And all those problems is what I needed to fix. He said how we were too expensive, how we would fix computers and charge them a huge amount of money unfairly. So I figured out I had to find new ways to make money with him that was fair. So what's wrong with my industry? And the third question to ask, if you want to clone your best customers, is what other vendors do you depend on? What other companies, besides myself, are you currently working with? And these aren't competitors. These are different companies. You know, who cleans the carpets? Who does the lights? And the reason you want to do this is so powerful. I'll save that for the very end of my presentation in about 20, 30 minutes to explain how you use that. The third step for growing a colossal pumpkin is the watering process. The ordinary pumpkin farmer uses a technique called saturation. And I actually saw it as I was flying in here into Guadalajara, these saturation systems. They're massive tubes that go over the fields and they drop water down as they move across the field. And if you've seen these, if you've been driving and you've seen these watering systems, chances are you've never seen them running because they don't run during the day. They only run at night when there's less evaporation into the sun. Well, these systems use a saturation technique because they have to water the entire field as fast as possible. Remember, if you're an ordinary pumpkin farmer, you're in the quantity game. The more water you can have coming down faster, more intensely, the better. And it's true, some plants will die during this process. Some will split under the weight. Other ones will drown from all the water coming down. There'll be lots of loss. But when you're in the quantity game, that's okay. It doesn't matter because as long as most of the plants start growing, you'll be successful. Well, the colossal pumpkin farmer uses a different technique. They don't use saturation systems. They use a technique called quenching. They'll put small amounts of water right on the strongest sprouts. And they'll do it for about a minute or two and leave, and then come back 1 hour later and do it again. They give the small or the growing strong sprout the optimal amount of water, about 10 to 20 times a day. And it's at this stage where you start seeing a colossal sprout start growing explosively, and where the ordinary farmer's weak sprouts grow very slowly. This is where it really starts to take hold. So that's how you do it in pumpkin farming, but how does it apply to entrepreneurship, to what we do? Well, you want to also quench your best customers. In the prior step, we identified, based upon revenue and how much we like them, who our true best customers are. You've now taken them out to lunch, you've met with them, you've gotten inside their mind and understand what they're all about. Well, when you meet with your best customers, don't just ask about them, but ask about their community. Where do they go? Where do they congregate? What kind of events do they attend? Do they go to events like Campus Party? Or do they go to events for the hedge fund industry like my client did? What magazines do they read? And stuff like that. Once you identify where your customers hang out, we need to hang out there too. We need to go where they go. Because there's a saying we use in the States, that birds of a feather flock together. It means similar types of people stay together. And so once you know where your best customers go, you want to go there too. With my client who was in the hedge fund market, I asked him if he went to technical events like this and networking events, and he said, no, hedge funds don't go there. We go to 2 major events in the United States every year, one in California and one in Connecticut. And so starting with that day, I started going to these events often. I asked him, I said, what magazines do you read? Do you read Entrepreneur Magazine or Forbes, very entrepreneurial magazines? And he said, no. We read a magazine specifically for our industry. So starting with that day going forward, I started to write for that magazine. Now here's the key. It's part of behavioral psychology. The more frequently your best customers and prospects see you, the more they'll automatically trust you. And the proof actually is with a great example is with Coca-Cola. I don't know if you watched the Olympics this year, but I was watching the Olympics, and the announcer says we're going to go to the gold medal ceremony, and they go to commercial break, and then there is a bottle of Coca-Cola on the screen, and there's that perfect bead of sweat dripping down. Now, Coca-Cola knows when we see the bottle of Coke that none of us are going to say, I'm watching the Olympics, and I'm not drinking a Coca-Cola. What am I doing? I need to run to the store. They know we're not going to do that. all they care about is that we see the Coca-Cola logo. Because the more frequently we see the logo, the more we trust it. And the proof is this. If you're at the store and you want to have soda, and you see a liter of Coke and a liter of generic soda, chances are you're going to buy the Coke because we trust the brand more. Even though logically we know it's the same ingredients, it's the same thing. But because we saw the Coke logo so many times, we buy the Coke, even though it costs more. Well, the powerful lesson here is true for our business. The more frequently your customers and your prospects see you, the more they'll trust you, the more they'll automatically want to do business with you, the more they'll see you as better than your generic competition. It's the power of frequency. In fact, when I sold, my second company was in computer crime investigation. My company helped facilitate the Enron trial, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Some of the biggest murder cases in U.S. history, my company did the investigation for it. And when I sold that company, it was purchased by a Fortune 500. Has anyone ever here sold a company, by the way? Okay. If you do sell a company, it is a great day. And what happens on this day is they flew me and my business partners out to New York for the headquarters where the main meeting was. And we sat down at this table and we did the negotiations and all the wheeling and dealing. And by the end of the day, I was now an employee for the first time in my life. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, but when I turned 35, I became an employee for the first day of my life. And I guess what you do as an employee is you want to put your best foot forward. You want to make a good impression. So I decided to work late that night. Well, I worked so late that the entire office had cleared out, and by the time it was to wrap up, it was about 2,400 hours. I walked to the elevator and opened the elevator, and when it opened up, I am telling you, the scariest, most frightening human being on the planet was on the inside, smoking a cigarette. He looked like Freddy Krueger, if you know who Freddy Krueger is. Smoking a cigarette, and he looks at me and goes, "You gonna get in the elevator?" And he throws a cigarette at me. And it's a scary moment. And I don't know if maybe you have never sold a business, but I don't know if you've ever been in a very professional environment where you're about to be murdered. It's terrifying. Your brain kind of splits in half. One side of your brain says, you're a professional, walk into this elevator. The other half says, you're about to die, run away. And so I kind of, when he said you can get in the elevator, I kind of did this weird move and walked like Frankenstein into the elevator, and I got in. He did not kill me, obviously. But what happened over the next 5 days is every time I went to the elevator, every time he was there. By the third day, I expected him. I knew his name. Hey, how you doing? By the fifth day, I bought him a pack of cigarettes and gave them to him. I never had a conversation with him. I never got to know him, but I saw him frequently. And the more frequently I saw him, the more I trusted him. He could be a murderer. He could be this dangerous person. But because I saw him frequently, I trusted him more. This same is true for our business. And none of our businesses are as scary as this guy was. But the more frequently we appear in front of our best prospects and customers, the more they'll automatically trust us. The more they're going to want to do business with us. So, identify where your best customers are by asking your current best customer and go where they go constantly, always. Just keep appearing and they'll start to trust you more and automatically want to do business with you. The fourth step to growing a colossal pumpkin is called root analysis. And if you're an ordinary pumpkin farmer, you don't look at the roots underground. You simply look at the leaves, because you're in the quantity game, above ground, and you look for what they call signs of blight, which means rots or disease. And you look over your massive field looking for rotting pumpkins or leaves, and you throw down some chemicals and pesticides to prevent it. If you're an ordinary farmer, a lot of plants die, but that's okay because you're in the quantity game. A colossal farmer, on the other hand, looks for the root system underground. What they do is they have these crazy goggles that they put on, and they'll look under their fields to see the condition of the root system. A colossal pumpkin, the roots can literally be about that size. A colossal pumpkin can put on 50 pounds of weight a day. So the health of the root system is critical. If one animal comes up and bites it, the entire plant dies. So they have to take care of the root. Oh, and one tip for you, by the way, these goggles that they wear that can see in the ground, they can also see through your clothing. So I warn you. I warned you. Now, how does this apply to business? The ordinary entrepreneur works at the surface level. And one of the most common surface level things I see, and we've all been trained or told to do, is to ask for referrals. It's the way we should grow our business. And how you do it is if we did business together, I would ask you, how was your experience with my company? And you'd say, likely it was good. Now remember, whatever people say to you is often a lie. It's socially appropriate to say it's good. You would say it was good. And then I've been told to ask for the referral. Well, do you have any friends or family perhaps that could also use my services? And then the client will sometimes give you a referral, but rarely give you a good one. Now the reason asking for referrals is not that effective is because it's a bad move for the customer. Because from the customer's perspective, I just did business for you, I took money from you, and I'm saying, oh, I'm sorry, your money's not good enough. I need your friends and family too. It's offensive. But worse is it causes dilution. Meaning if I work with someone else now, I'm not paying attention to you, I'm paying attention to the person who referred me to. So for a customer to give us a referral, it's dangerous and they'll get less attention. Colossal entrepreneurs use a different technique. And it's called the vendor well. Actually, I mentioned this question a little bit earlier on to you, and this is how the vendor well works. When you meet with your best customer and you ask them these different questions, what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, ask them what other vendors do you currently work with. And what my customer did when I asked them that, they said, well, why do you care who else I work with? And I told Larry, the owner of the hedge fund, I said, if I know the person that does your electrical and the person that cleans your office, maybe we can work together. Maybe when I install the computer systems and I put the cabling down, maybe it's in the way. Maybe I'm doing other things that are interfering with your other vendors. But if we can work together, we collectively can serve you, the customer, better. So Larry said, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. I'll gladly introduce you to my other vendors. So Larry did turn me on to the electrical guy and turned me on to the person that cleans the carpets. He turned me on to a company that made the trading desk, the company that was his bank, all these different vendors. And I started to call them. The trading desk guy was interesting. And in case you don't know what a trading desk is, if you're at a brokerage firm and you trade stock, it's a specialized desk that has what's called linear line of sight, which means your keyboard, your mouse, and the monitor are all within one line of sight. You don't have to move your eyeballs around. You can look at everything simultaneously. And that's important because if you're doing financial transactions, every millisecond counts. Every second matters. Well, there was a problem we had with this trading desk. We were installing the computers into this desk, but anytime they changed the desk around, they expanded it, added more spots for other people to sit, the computer system would break. It would go down. And Larry, my client, would call very upset, saying, we need to get this fixed immediately. Get someone here right now. So I told the trading desk company that we had this issue. I said, what do we do to fix this? And he said, oh, you're the computer guy. When you install the cable for your computers in the trading desk, you're putting it where the electrical stuff goes. You need to put it on the other side for the data conduit. I said, oh, that's the answer. And starting with that day going forward, we put our cables on the proper side of the trading desks. And the computers never went down again. Larry, our mutual client, was thrilled. He was happy because we were paying more attention to him. But the real miracle that happened was about 5 or 6 weeks later, the company that made the trading desk called me. And they said, hey, we just landed a new client, just like Larry, and we installed a trading desk, but they don't like their computer company. Would you be interested in doing the work? And I'm like, yes, I would, very much. And that day, I got my second Larry. And about 6 weeks later, another one. 2 weeks later, another one. All being referred by this trading desk company because we started to work together. Goldman Sachs, who's a bank for hedge funds, I did the same process with them. I collaborated with them in working with our mutual best clients, and they turned my company onto 70 different hedge funds. And within 3 years, my company called Olmec, named after the Olmeca in Veracruz, Mexico, it's Olmec.com, went from a little small startup to a multi-million dollar company, and I sold it. It still exists today if you want to check them out at Olmec.com. The key is not asking for referrals like we've been told. The key is for asking for the other vendors that your best customers use. Because once you get access to those other vendors, you have a network of access to all of these best customers. I'll share one more technique with you because we're running really tight on time today. It's pruning. And if you're an ordinary farmer, you don't do much pruning at all. Pruning is where you cut off parts of the plant. Because if you're an ordinary farmer, you're in the quantity game. The more pumpkins that grow, the better. You want everything to grow. So if something's growing, you leave it alone. The colossal farmer, I found, is very interesting. They constantly prune. If they have a massive pumpkin growing here and a small one growing here, they remove it instantly. They prune it off immediately. And they don't look at the pumpkin and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe we'll let you stay for a while. The second they see a little pumpkin growing, it gets removed immediately. Because the colossal pumpkin farmer knows every little pumpkin that's allowed to grow is taking or stealing nutrients and water and time from the colossal pumpkin. It has to be removed immediately. This is the biggest challenge I find for entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs I've met and worked with live check by check. They're trying to grow their business, but never really make it. And what do? They say, well, to grow, I got to start another pumpkin. I got to have another thing growing. Now, we don't call it pumpkins. We call it opportunities. But we'll say, oh, I have another opportunity. I need to get that growing. I have an opportunity here. I could also do this. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. Ordinary entrepreneurs continually go after new opportunities. And what happens is all the time and energy and nutrients from us get spread everywhere, and there's nothing left for the colossal pumpkin. Colossal entrepreneurs constantly say no to opportunities. In fact, there's a great example with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs grew Apple twice. He grew Next Computers. He grew Pixar, a billion-dollar movie company. On his dying day, a journalist, his final interview before he passed away, asked him, how can you be so successful again and again and again? And he said, if I had to attribute it to one thing, it's been my discipline of saying no to great opportunities. If you're saying yes to a lot of things, you'll continue to struggle. If you start saying no, that is how you grow. And that's the pumpkin plan. And as I share this story with people, some people get it. I'm talking about focusing on a certain type of industry or best type of customer, providing one thing for them, being very focused and driving forward, always being in front of them. When I tell people that, I often hear it's very risky. I mean, what if this doesn't work? What if the industry collapses? What if this fails? I would be done. Aren't I better by doing everything? I want to guarantee this will succeed. Well, I have good news. There is a guarantee. The bad news is not for colossal entrepreneurs. It's for ordinary entrepreneurs. And you can discover it out in ordinary pumpkin fields. You'll never drive by a pumpkin field, an ordinary pumpkin field, and miraculously see a colossal pumpkin growing. The ordinary process prohibits colossal growth. But with colossal farmers, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes a pumpkin will be growing explosively, and then it'll fall under its own weight. It just dies. Other times, a crazy storm will come through the area and kill the colossal pumpkin immediately. But what was interesting about colossal pumpkin farmers is none of them said, oh, it doesn't work. They simply said, it wasn't my season. And they went right back and got the next seed and started the exact same process over again. And then ultimately, at some point, they grew a colossal pumpkin. here's my commitment to you. This process I shared with you works. It's not something I invented. This is the process that's been around forever. The riches are in the niches. Drive and focus on a certain category is where explosive growth happens. The problem is sometimes it's not going to happen. Sometimes the economy is going to collapse. Sometimes the industry will fail. But if you stick with this process and you do it over and over again, it is just a matter of time before it becomes your season and you have colossal growth. It's been a pleasure talking with all of you, and I wish you colossal success in your business. Gracias. Muchas gracias. Pura vida. Gracias.